and welcome to a special St. Patrick's Day edition of Inspiring Honesty. Today is an unusual format. I will not be joined by my regular co-host, Bob Graves. As a matter of fact, I'm only doing a short introduction to the main event. I forgot my tagline here. I'm Greg Brahe, and I'm an atheist. Today I have the privilege of introducing an interview that I did earlier this week one-on-one with Dave Silverman. He wasn't able to show up live, so unfortunately we're not going to be able to respond to any commentary during the show. I did have a few people give me some input while the recording was going or beforehand with some questions they'd like to see. But there's something that I wanted to highlight about the video before we go into it. And so my son is calling for me. You might be hearing him. There's a really significant point that we talk about during this video or this interview that I really want to make a point of. Here, come here, Casey, come here. This is the live show problem. Is I've got my little guy. He wanted to come up and say hi, but can you say hi? Yeah. See the camera? Can you say hi?
Hi.
All right. Can you go downstairs and find Mama? She's looking for you. Now, what I was saying is, in this interview, I talk with Dave Silverman about the convention that's coming up. The American Atheist Convention is a big event that's coming up at the end of this month, Easter weekend, and it's that's sort of the cursory portion of it. That it's important, and I think it's a significant event. However, I'm not going to be there, so it's not as important as it could have been. What is important, though, is talking about what the American Atheist does and their choices in how to present atheism, to present the juxtaposition of religion and irreligion in the world today. And I personally feel like it's an important thing to highlight coming into the show is that there is a difference with the way that I approach it versus the way the American Atheists do. And I think that there's a need for both to some extent. But as you'll notice during this is Dave Silverman and the American Atheists consider what they do to be a form almost of intellectual warfare. I would much rather use this interview as a way to highlight the difference in the way that the New Covenant group comes together to, instead of divide, to unite people on the common goal of eliminating the harm done by orthodoxy, by religion, and by bad faith. So with no further ado, I just wanted to say thank you for joining us one more time. I'm going to duck out for the remainder of this, so you'll just get the pre-recorded interview. And happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. This is Inspiring Honesty. Join us again next week at 6 p.m. Welcome to a special edition of Inspiring Honesty, where I'll be joined one-on-one with Dave Silverman for a follow-up interview to our conversation that we had on the 3rd, and also just an interview about himself and the American Atheist. Dave, thank you for joining us for the show today.
It's my pleasure to be back on the show, Greg. Nice to talk to you again.
Thank you. Yeah, it'd be nice to see you, but again, we're talking blind with one another. I wanted to say first that I think that the last conversation that we had deserves a little bit of discussion right away, in saying that it's fair to say it didn't go as planned. Not unless, of course, your goal was to derail the conversation into presuppositional apologetics. So was there anything else that you wanted to say about that conversation, or any other things that you'd like to add to the topic, is church harmful, before we move on to my regularly planned interview?
The point that they were trying to make was, what is church? And if you get into what is church and what is harmful and what is harm, you completely lose the meaning. And that is one of the things that they try and do. And when I say they, I'm talking about the apologists who make their living trying to reconcile the invisible magic man in the sky with the 21st century. That's what apologetics is. It's a reconciliation of their mythology, of ancient mythology, with what we know today. And you can't do it. You can't. So what they do is they make stuff up. Sometimes they make up explanations, and sometimes they simply derail the conversation so that nobody is talking about the subject matter, so that you're talking about uh, the philosophical definition versus the scientific definition of the word no, instead of is church harmful. So I mean, we could talk about is church harmful, but I don't want to get into that discussion so much, except to say that of course it's harmful because it gets people obeying when they should be thinking. And that was my whole point. The reason that church is harmful is that it takes somebody who's not qualified to be in an authoritative position and places him in such an authoritative position that in many cases he's beyond reproach and beyond question. And that is that's the fundamental piece that allows religion, as Christopher Hitchens used to say, to poison everything. The unquestionability of people who do not deserve to be in that position or anywhere close to that position, where they can just literally, as some people were doing on that call, as apologists do all the time, where they can just literally make stuff up and not be questioned on it. And that's why church is dangerous. That's why church is harmful. It gets people into the mindset of thinking, okay, following along, even though you don't understand, even though it doesn't make sense, is a virtue. Faith is a virtue. It's a good thing. And that's what starts people down the road of blind following, blind lemming-like behavior. And that not only hurts the person, it hurts the society on the whole. And that's the point that I was trying to make before I got cut off with, what is knowledge?
Well, thank you. I think I agree very much with what you're saying here. And I think that actually the New Covenant group in general does, even the theists that we have as part of it. So I wanted to say I forgot to give you a proper introduction at the beginning of the interview here. So you are the president of the American Atheists. You've been the president since 2010. Can I ask you right away, what is an atheist?
An atheist is someone who is absent an active belief in a deity. An atheist is somebody who does not have a belief in a deity. Now, there are many different kinds of atheists. I myself am a conclusionary atheist. That means I've read, I've thought, and I've come to the conclusion that there aren't any gods. That's one kind of atheist. Another kind of atheist is an atheist who might say, well, I don't know. I don't know everything in the universe. I haven't done all my studying. I haven't done all my reading. There may be a God. I don't know. That's also an atheist. You don't have an active belief in a God. Then if you take the step beyond that, if you say, well, I believe in a God that does this, that's not an atheist. So a person who doesn't have an active belief in a deity, including babies, including children who haven't think about it, including people from other countries who might have never heard of it, they're all atheists. Anybody who doesn't have an active belief in a God is without a belief in a God. And that's what an atheist is. And American Atheists, it was formed in 1963 by Madalyn Murray O'Hair, who fought at the Supreme Court to remove forced Bible readings from school. We are best known as the hardline atheists. We're the firebrands. Mostly conclusionary atheists who want religion out of our lives unless we ask for it to come in. Who want religion out of our government because that's how you attain religious freedom. So American Atheists fights the hard line. We say the honest things, even if they're politically incorrect. So that makes me a hardline atheist, a conclusionary atheist, but it certainly does not make that definition all-encompassing of atheism.
That's, I think, an important qualification. And I did want to ask, this is a bit of a shameless plug for a friend here, but are you aware of the Atheist Census Project from the Atheist Alliance International?
Yeah, I am aware of that, and I'm supportive of it. I've retweeted it a few times.
Okay, they asked if I could ask about it today, and I think it's a wonderful project that's helping to bring together more information about atheists around the world and what we do personally self-identify as. So it's interesting that you outright came out with the qualification that not all atheists would identify in the same way. So thank you
No,
for that.
part of our biggest problem is that we don't identify in the same way. Part of our biggest problem is that people think that all atheists are conclusionary atheists. People think that all atheists are hardline atheists. And as a result, they call themselves agnostics. They call themselves humanists. They call themselves brights. They call themselves secular, other, or nuns. They're all atheists. The problem is that if you think about, just walking up to a person on the side of the road, just walk up to a Methodist and say, "What's your religion?" He'll say Christian. Walk up to a Presbyterian, he'll say Christian. Even if you walk up to a Mormon, they'll say Christian. But if you walk up to an atheist, they could call themselves agnostics or secular humanists or brights or whatever. So when you look at the polls, you see, oh, this country is 75% Christian and 2% atheist. That's crap. It's 5% atheist. Well, I should say actually 15% atheist, according to most polls, if you include the agnostics and the secular nuns, the atheists that call themselves other things. And then if you compare that to the fact that some Christians are Catholics, some Christians are Methodists, some Christians are evangelical Protestants. And some of them are fake Christians. So, they call themselves Mormons or the Jews for Jesus, who are fake Jews. The problem with the self-identification is large, and it's hurting us. And it's one of the main points that I make when I give speeches is that if you don't have an active belief in a God, the word you should be using is atheist, because anything else is diverting away from the subject. It's an easy answer, and it leaves an opportunity on the table to teach. It leaves that opportunity on the table. I've got a friend who's he calls himself a naturalistic non-theist. Now, what the hell does that mean? A naturalistic non-theist. He's an atheist. But if you have a conversation with this guy, I love when people make that
qualification between a and non, as if it's no a difference more than just Greek or Latin.
It's silly, but more importantly, it's actually harmful. Because when somebody meets my friend and they have this long conversation about religion, and my friend leaves, the person he was talking to could easily say, well, at least he's not an atheist. Right? And so now my friend has yes, he's taken a much easier conversation. He's not said the A word, but then again, he has not made any progress to de-demonizing the A word. He's not helped anybody. He's mislabeled himself in a way to make him look like he's not an atheist, which he is. So essentially, he's told an untruth. He's actually misled the person he was talking to, while at the same time avoiding the opportunity for the person he was talking to actually live up, to take the high road. I mean, if he says, I'm an atheist, the guy he's talking to might say, oh, I'm an atheist too. Or, oh, my mother was an atheist. Or, oh, that's great. It doesn't necessarily have to be negative, and people kind of think that it will be. So they're afraid to use the A word, and that perpetuates this myth and the bigotry. That the myth that the bigotry is prevalent, which is more prevalent than it is, and the bigotry itself that actually does exist. Both of those are eliminated when you just tell the truth and use the word atheist to describe yourself. And there's a lot of people out there who disagree with that. With all due respect, those people are wrong. We're trying to win a fight here. We're trying to win a war. Calling yourself an agnostic because you don't know is bullshit, because nobody knows about anything. You and I, we could wake up tomorrow morning in the Matrix. You can't prove it won't happen. We don't know with 100% certainty. Even if I brought Keanu Reeves into the studio and he said, no, dude, I'm an actor. And even if we brought the writers of the Matrix in and he said, no, man, I made this stuff up, that in and of itself would not prove the Matrix to be fiction with 100% certainty. 99.999, yes, but not 100%. So what do we know? Well, we know there's no God just as much as we know there's no Santa Claus. So calling yourself an agnostic softens the blow, sure, but it avoids the opportunity to teach, it avoids the opportunity to improve, and it avoids your opportunity to better this country by eliminating the bigotry, or at least by downplaying the bigotry, by putting a face to the word. Agnosticism is a non-word. It doesn't mean anything. Atheist means something, and everybody out there calling themselves an agnostic should get with the program and call themselves an atheist, because it's true.
Reminds me a little bit of the joke about the atheist in Ireland being asked, so are you a Catholic or a Protestant? And then saying, well, I'm an atheist. Yeah, well, yes, but are you a Catholic atheist or a Protestant atheist?
Right.
That's sort of where the agnostic comes into play. I mean, if you tell somebody that you're an agnostic, they still need to ask a qualifying question there. Sure, are you a theistic or an atheistic agnostic?
Exactly. You're not answering the question. You're avoiding the question. And you're avoiding the question because, and I'm just going to say it, you're too chicken to actually come out and say what you are. You're afraid.
Well, and why would somebody be afraid to do that? What kind of consequences could that possibly bring up?
Well, to go from an agnostic to an atheist, it is a bit of a jump. I mean, it's not nothing, okay? And that's why people are calling themselves agnostics and not atheists. It is not nothing to go from, because people think agnosticism is kind of a fence sitter. It's not. I mean, that's simply a wrong definition of the word. An agnostic is not a person who's kind of sort of leaning up against the fence of whether he believes or disbelieves. The people who are on the fence, they're atheists. They don't have an active belief in a God. Agnostics simply are aware of the fact that they don't know everything, and therefore are unwilling to make a definitive answer when they ask that question. But you can say the same thing about everything. Am I absolutely sure there's no God? Well, am I absolutely sure I'm sitting in a chair right now and not dreaming about this? I'm as absolutely sure as I can be about anything. That's why agnosticism means nothing, because whatever you can say about it, about God as an agnostic, you can say about every single thing. And that's why the word has no meaning. And that's why the word is confusing. It's not there to help. It's a bad word that nobody should be using. It does not answer the question of, do you believe in God? The answer is no, you're an atheist. If you don't have an actual active belief in a deity, you're an atheist. Get over it and start dealing with it.
Well, Dave, we have a limited amount of time here, so I wanted to say a little bit more about the American Atheist, or get you to say that. First of all, you classify yourselves as an educational organization, not political or religious. But isn't it true, you mentioned earlier that you started over a lawsuit about school prayer, and you do get actively involved in politics in a way, just not partisan politics. Is that correct?
Well, of course. We're fervent supporters of the separation of church and state. And that means we're going to be somewhat involved in political processes. We're going to be against any law that infringes on the separation of church and state, such as school prayer, such as voucher schemes, such as anything that merges the two, because we understand that the more church and state are merged, the less religious freedom we have. By definition, the more church and state are merged, the less free the citizenry is. If a Christian can go 70 miles an hour and a non-Christian can only go 65, well, there's a push right there by the government to make you go 70. And that's why, to make you go Christian so you can go faster. So we take positions on political items. We do not take positions on politicians. We're not a lobbying organization. We are an educational organization. We educate the public on the separation of church and state, on issues relating to atheism. We're not a religious organization for obvious reasons. We don't have a preacher. We don't preach morality. We don't have regular services on Sundays, etc. But we do talk about religion, specifically about how religion impacts and affects the non-religious population. And we educate the entire country on how that works. And that's why we're an educational organization.
Okay, and your convention is coming up in just a few weeks. It's on Zombie Jesus or Easter Sunday, right?
Zombie Jesus Day, yeah. It's Easter weekend. It's the whole weekend. And it is our 50th anniversary. So, like I said, Madalyn Murray O'Hair, 1963, formed American Atheists. And now it's 50 years later. We're having a huge bash in Austin, Texas. That's where we were started. That's where we were formed. Um, One of the things that I want people to understand about our conventions is that uh, our conventions are fun. Our conventions are the kind of conventions that you will remember for years or even decades beyond. Our conventions are designed to stand out from the rest. They're the largest atheist conventions in the country. Um, they are. We're going to have a costume party. We're going to have a pub crawl. We're going to have 4 live performances, including a full free concert by the band Quiet Riot. We're also going to have speakers that you don't see at other conventions. AC Grayling is in from England to speak to us for the first time on American soil in a very long time. JJ French, the lead guitarist for Twisted Sister, is coming to speak. He's one of our keynote speakers. Congressman Pete Stark, recently retired, is going to talk about being the only atheist in Congress, being the only outed atheist in Congress. So the convention lineup is absolutely stellar, and most importantly, it's going to be fun. And it's at atheists.org. There are still registrations. We're still going to be selling registrations. Looks like we're also going to be selling day passes as well, just in case you want to come during the day. But the important thing to realize, to understand about the American Atheist Convention, this is going to be a fun, happening, active event where everybody can learn a lot, but also meet a lot of really great people and have a fantastic time. And I'm having a good time putting it together. The schedule now is almost rock solid, and we're getting really excited here to see all the speakers that are coming, all the speakers that we've seen before, but also all the new speakers that I have never seen before. I have never heard speak before, and I'm really excited about it. It starts on the 28th, which is a Thursday. I think it's the 28th, but yeah. And that's when we have an art show sneak peek and the fundraising dinner where you can eat with Congressman Stark. You can eat with me. You can eat with AC Grayling. And then during the convention, we're actually having the first ever, to the best of our knowledge, atheist art show, where people can come and see atheists displaying atheistic art, and that's really, really loose. And you can bid and you can buy the art, because we need to help this movement grow in every single direction. And so American Atheists is doing this for no profit, really, having this art show that just to help the atheist artists get a little more notoriety, get a little more oomph under their business. Lots of vendors coming. Over 50 speakers will be coming. It's the speakers start on Friday. They go through Sunday. So if you're making reservations, plan to stay until Sunday evening, because it's good at the end.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit more about what the American Atheists actually do and what you're known for as well. Obviously, the convention is something that brings a lot of people together, but it's not necessarily something that makes it into the media as much as, say, your billboard campaigns do.
Right.
You're running one right now, the Go Godless Instead, featuring various politicians and even the former Pope and the Catholic Church in there. But that's not the only one that you've done. I mean, I've been watching your campaigns for some time. That it's a myth campaign. The one's about Mormon bigotry, exposing the advocacy for slavery in the Bible. One particular favorite of mine is the one that mentioned 30,000 different versions of Christian truth.
Right.
And I have to ask you, from the perspective of an atheist who's involved in a quasi-Christian organization here, or the New Covenant Group, that our goal is to bring people together in a way that we can have these conversations in a civil manner. And do you think that what the American Atheists do with these billboards is necessarily the most helpful to improving the image of atheists in the United States?
That's an excellent question, and I really appreciate that question. The atheist movement is very, very broad, and that means that there are some atheists out there who feel that it's more important to hold hands with the religious people and to be more kumbaya-y with religion. American Atheist does not take that stance. we are not in this to make nice with who we see are our oppressors. We are not here to say, if they put a 20-foot tall cross on public land with public money in the World Trade Center, and then we say you need to be fair, and they say, how dare you get in our way? How dare you even talk about this? How dare you stop us from putting crosses here? These people, their religion is not our friend. Okay, it is an oppressor, and it has a privilege that needs to be challenged. And yes, you can be nice to religious people. I have absolutely no problem being nice to religious people. My wife is religious. My friends are religious. I have no problem with that. But religion is not friendly. Religion is not the friend of the atheists. In fact, religion is the enemy of the atheist by definition, and it needs to be treated that way. It is a myth. It is a lie. It is a scam. It did support slavery, and we should shame them. And when those religious leaders come out and say, how can I trust you if you don't pray? The word for that is bigotry and hate. It's not our friend. It's not a good guy who says that. When somebody comes out and says, everything that homosexuals do is filthy, this is not a good person. This is not a nice person. This is a sick person. This is a person who needs to be called out. When religion says, you need to pray in order for me to judge you to be a moral character, that's kind of scummy. That's not okay. When religion comes to us and says, oh, we don't want you to draw any pictures of our prophet or our savior anymore. I'm drawing some pictures as soon as you tell me that, because I'm not going to follow religious rules just because they want me to. So I don't have the opinion that being nice is positive. In fact, I would answer your question as absolutely yes. Our billboards are more effective at helping the atheist community advance because it shows the theistic community that we're not going to sit back and take it, that we're not going to thank them for oppressing us or for shoving their religion down our throats or our kids' throats, that 40% of this country believes evolution is a scam. That's horrible. That's damaging our country to an amazing extent. It is not friendly. It is not benevolent. It is a harmful pox on our society that needs to be defeated. Religion is something that needs to die. In fact, it should have died a long time ago. And I'm not its friend, and I will never be its friend. Now, that doesn't mean I hate all religious people. Please don't think that I'm talking about religious people. I'm talking about religion. Religion sucks, and it needs to go away. It's not my friend, and I'm never going to be its friend.
That, I think, is a beautifully spoken tirade there. I have to say I can empathize a lot with it. I do see a few differences or nuances in the argument of needing both, something to bring people together and something to promote warfare specifically, or to meet the warfare that's coming at us. But I want to ask, do you see an end game? Will there be a point when American atheists are no longer needed? A lot of people look at atheism and say, well, it's just another religion. And I think that the real qualifying point behind that would be if the American atheists stuck around well beyond the point that there was anybody fighting against atheists anymore. That might be true. So is there going to be a point when American atheists can disband? And if so, how will we know when that time has come?
That's another excellent question, Greg. And the answer is yes. In fact, the answer is yes during our lifetimes. Religion is on a steep decline because people are realizing how much crap it is, how full of crap it is. Again, we talked about Psy before. We talked about that last show. People are realizing that he spent an hour and a half avoiding the subject. They're starting to realize that all religious leaders spend a whole bunch of time avoiding the subject of why their invisible magic man in the sky is real when everybody else's invisible magic man in the sky is fake. So we're seeing a dramatic increase, especially in the young, of atheism, and a dramatic decrease in organized religion, which will just feed atheism even more. How will we know? We'll know very, very well. When I'm elected to Congress, we'll know I'm done. And will American atheists disband? You know, every nonprofit organization serves a purpose, or at least in an ideal world, it serves a purpose. Of course, churches serve no purpose, but that's beside the point. Um, but a nonprofit educational organization has a purpose, and the purpose is to put itself out of business. Okay? Every charity wants to go out of business. Every organization, every nonprofit organization wants to solve their problem and go out of business. American atheists will be looking at that situation probably in about 20 years, at which time we'll probably become the curators because we have an extensive library, one of the largest atheist libraries in the world. We will become the curators of atheist history. But yeah, there will become a time during our lifetimes when religion is so weakened that the separation of church and state is lock solid and protected and respected by everyone. We will be winning this fight. And when that time comes, I think we will all know it.
Well, I want to ask you said at the end game time, hopefully within about 20 years. I think that given my experience, I guess I'm not as experienced in this as you, but I think that might be a touch optimistic. But aside from just being the curator of it, there's also some positive actions. We had a viewer question. Well, actually, somebody asking, just knowing that this interview is coming up. It is being broadcast live at the moment, but it will most likely be seen by several more people during my regularly scheduled time slot when we'll recast it. There's a lot of people who would like to see secular or humanist organizations dedicated to funding hospitals, schools, and other types of community enrichment. I mean, right now, religions do have the market cornered on a lot of that. Do you see a need for these? And what can be done to implement such an organization?
Well, hospitals and schools should be run by the government, and they should be regulated by the government. They should be private practices. I don't think that there's a need for an atheist hospital. I think all non-religious hospitals are atheist hospitals by default. I think all non-religious schools are atheist schools, or at least secular schools by default. The religious organizations, they put up these churches, and they put up these schools to indoctrinate their children. That's the purpose of religious school, is to indoctrinate children. And they put up hospitals for a very, very good reason, to make money. And in many cases, they can use their money to actually push their politics on other people, on non-inherents. Try getting an abortion at a Catholic hospital. You can't do it. And of course, you do a wonderful amount of recruiting when people are at the lowest point in their lives, when they're sick. Oh, Jesus healed you. So I don't think there's a need for an atheist hospital or an atheist school. I think there is a need to eliminate any kind of federal help for religious schools, and I don't think there's a need at all for religious hospitals. Why in the world do we have religious hospitals? That's ridiculous. All hospitals should be private and secular and open to everybody and not about God. I think we need to stop playing the "we should do that too" game and start playing the "why in the world do they have their fingers in there" game.
That's a really good answer to that. I have to say, I live in a town, I was born and raised here in Appleton, Wisconsin, where there are two major hospital systems, and both of them are very religiously oriented. One of them is actually St. Elizabeth Hospital, and the other one changed its name to become a little bit more secular over time. But you're right; it's impossible to avoid it in some situations. And in the low times, there's chaplains there that are coming to your room, even if you don't want them to.
That's right, and they're there for a very specific reason: to make you one of them at your lowest point in your life and your family. That's why it's there. That's why else would the chaplain be there?
So one final question, I guess, before I offer you the opportunity to speak. I know you're on a limited time crunch here.
I am quite crunched here.
So in a perfect world, is religion gone, or is it just no longer, or has it evolved into a way that it's no longer divisive and harmful?
I think they're both perfect. I think in a truly perfect world, there is no religion, but there is no religion due to the fact that it has been given up on an individual level by every human in the world. That's a perfect world. A perfect world does not include prohibitions against religion. A perfect world includes prohibitions against religion using the government to its personal gain. A perfect world has people understanding that all religions are the same, and therefore giving up the ancient mythologies of yesteryear. However, I think a perfect world could also include religion if that religion stayed in the church and stayed in the private lives of those practicing. I think that's still perfect. I think that's still among the perfect. Yes, there would still be indoctrination, and that's admittedly imperfect. But I have no fundamental problem with people living lives as they see fit, so long as it doesn't affect me or you or anybody that doesn't want to be affected. So the first step of a perfect world would be to neuter religion's influence on society and let everybody live the way they want to live. The second step, true perfection, is when everybody when everybody treats religion and mythology as equals. And you can learn about it in the history books and you can learn about it in the mythology books, but nobody takes it seriously. But
thank you, Dave, for joining us.
And thanks for having me on, Greg. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. Again, American Atheist National Convention is going to be fantastic, and you should come. The website is atheists.org, ATHEISTS.org, and it's going to be a fantastic convention. We hope everybody comes.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before I let you go?
No, I'm actually done. I want to thank you very much for having me on the show, and I look forward to speaking to you both again, or to everybody again, in a maybe a more calm debate with more rational people.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. And again, this has been an interview with Dave Silverman, the president of American Atheists. The convention is coming up in the end of March. So if you get the chance, take it or give it a look, give it a shot.
Give it a shot. If you've never gone to an atheist convention, an atheist event, you are missing a part of life. And it is something to walk into a room with 1,000 atheists. It is a very incredible experience. If you've never had that, you deserve it, and you should do it. Thanks a bunch.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right.
This has been another edition of Inspiring Honesty, a special edition with Dave Silverman, president of American Atheists, joining us again to discuss the convention coming up and to join the New Covenant Group in our mission to destroy dogma and orthodoxy and the damage done by religion in the world today. And as much as Dave Silverman is part of a very vitriolic community of atheists that fight as if it's open warfare against religion, he's also part of this same movement and attempting to just reduce the harm. That's what the New Covenant Group is for, where we can bring Dr. Michael W. Jones, a theist, and Bob Graves, the unconventional pastor, together with myself, an atheist, and Dave Silverman, the president of American Atheists, and have a civil conversation to move forward in helping everybody in this common goal of just breaking down the walls of orthodoxy that divide all of us.